Kudats'hwdełdiix, Ahtna Nene, Kenaege, Kudats'hwdełdiix. We are teaching them Ahtna Land Language. Sondra, Shaginoff-Stuart, and Denny presenting. Welly Jan, Kudats'hwdełdiix, Janet Shaginoff-Stuart, China Nakaltani nas chukde nas chase, chutat na wilset, dwe lai, na, ya, ben, kitan, nene, sinake, in int huinethan. Danta kotana denenet. Krishna el ista, kotana, chilan, doislani, tselke koli da'a. Tadet not studash, Nilkanasta delta, welset banini katset, welset kotana dat soldichte, kotana neliana welset hunikdoziste. How is everyone? This is a blessing and healing for all of our ancestors, our families, and the beautiful land, the trees, mountains, sky, and waters. We recognize that we live and work on the lands of the Ahtna Dene people, and that they have lived here for thousands of years. We respectfully recognize these indigenous people who have stewarded the land and are still here and will continue to be in this place. We look to a good learning in this space. Shaginoff-Stuart, Marco Pete, Jeannie Maxim, Lena Charlie, Catherine Wade. These are all of our teachers. We'd like to give thanks for our teachers that have taught us the language, Ahtna Kenaege, these practices of culture, and how it connects us back to our land and our place. Chinanskyo. Sondra Suzette Lan, Night Dini Anakaya, El Pyramid Lake Tsinziaden, and Kachna Easta Kadi. I'd like to recognize the place of where I am from. My family is from Chickaloon Village and also Pyramid Lake Paiute Reservation in Nevada, but I currently live in Kenai. Our environment is very important to us as it gives context of connection and respect of where our people come from and how we can bring them forward.
Oweli Dan, Oweli Kulanda, Oweli Kulan. Sidu Nani Nithna Siza El Jessica Siza. Tis Kledzetna Kaya Tinsiaden. Tisna Yidu Testal. Sidu Tatla Dene. Benta El Tis Kledzetna Zesta. Alaska Leadership Group Waresna. Agnes Denny. Du sna sunt Tom Denny du sta sunt Ryan sung Lena Charlie du sukt and si du Skylar Aurora Airy Siatzit Tanan. Good day, everybody. My name is Jessica Denny. My Athabasca name is Nani Nithna. I am from the village of Chisachina, Alaska. I am from Tisna Yidu Testath, which means I am from along the Chishna River. And Chisachina, just really briefly, Chisachina is right where the Chisachina River meets the Copper River. We're on the south side of that. I come from the headwaters people of the Copper River, and I live in both Wasilla and Chisachina. And I work at Alaska Leadership Group. My mom is Agnes Denny, and she's from Chisachina. My father is Tom Denny, and he's from Tanacross, Alaska. I have an older brother. His name is Ryan. And my grandma is Lena Charlie. And she is also Ahtna Dene. She's Headwaters person. And she also lives in Chisachina, Alaska. I have 3 daughters, Skylar, Aurora, and Ariel. And I'm excited to share with you today about plants and share about Ahtna language and culture. Tanan. Here is a photo of my family that is participating in traditional activities. On the right upper corner, you see my grandmother, my mother, and my 3 daughters. My grandma Lena, she's the matriarch of our family, and she taught a lot to her grandchildren about what it means to be on the land, what it means to respect yourself, and what it means to respect your environment, the animals, the plants, people, elders, and the weather. And in this photo down below on the right side, you can see here she's holding a knife, and she's poking holes, cutting holes into a moose hide, and she's doing it in a certain way so that we can process the moose hide by twisting it and stretching it. So today we're talking about plants, and plants are a very important part of our culture, and us as Dene people, Athabascan people, plants teach us so many things. So just briefly, I want to talk about the importance of plants. Plants, they don't only provide medicine and food to us, but they provide many other things. And one thing right here I'd like to share is that they also tell us when the salmon are coming. So when the salmon are traveling up the Copper River to the headwaters, to the Tenada Creek, to the Bensonese area, when the salmon are coming up, there's the dandelions, and the dandelion has that little seed puff. And so when you see that, that tells us that the salmon are coming to the headwaters. They're on their way to the headwaters, and they'll be there soon. Huna. Here's 3 photos of berries. These photos are photos from my family members that were taken during berry picking, harvesting, and then also using those berries to create ice cream. So when you're harvesting berries or plants or even trees, you have to do it in a respectful and honorable manner. A big part of our practice and belief system is that you cannot overuse, even if there's an abundance of that particular resource, you still cannot overutilize that resource. It's being disrespectful to that tree, plant, or berry. And also part of that too is when you're out collecting and harvesting, whether it's berry picking or plants, we were taught to always go deeper in the woods, further away from the road systems and trail systems. And part of that is just so that you have, you're not just harvesting things so close to your home. And we practice that too with hunting. We don't hunt right in our community. We'll hunt further away from our communities. So if there's ever a need or desire for emergency hunting, whether it's through potlatch or what, we'll always have that resource closer to home. And that's a survival practice that we practice. And just another thing about resources and harvesting and plants is plants not only provide medicine and food to us, but they also support different modes of our lifestyle, whether it's through transportation or clothing. So for example, if we look at the snowshoes and the dog sleds, those are made from certain birch trees that are harvested and processed and bent to create those modes of transportation. And then if you look at spruce trees, we utilize the wood to keep us warm in the wintertime, to keep us safe during extreme climates. And we also use rotten wood to help with processing moose hides. So those are just some examples and ways in which we utilize plants and trees outside of medicine in food preservation. Huna. So here's the photo. On the top right, you can see Grandma Lena on the right in a hat, and then her younger sister, Grandma Laura, tanning and working on a moose hide. Right here, they're fleshing a moose hide. And then below is a photo of my Aunt Evelyn, who is mushing an 8-dog team. And then on the lower left is a photo of salmon heads that are strung on a piece of willow that has all the branches and leaves on there. These are just some examples, like I was just speaking about, how we utilize plants and trees outside of the context of food and consumption in medicine. We also use plants as a way to heal, not just heal ourselves through medicinal ways, but also through, we'll share this later, but through, not through consuming, but in other modes like steam bath and stuff. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. And I think that's all I have, Sondra, for this. So I basically talked about utilizing plants and trees for transportation, for clothing, because it's a part of the processing side of tanning moose hides and caribou hides and sheep hides to create clothing. We use it in the process of food, like the example of the salmon heads right here that are strung on willow. We also will use willow bark as lashings. We'll use spruce roots as lashings. So those are different types of roping systems that are not made from moose hide, and they work very efficient and they're accessible almost all over in Ahtna country. Hana.
So we'll go over some of the words for a lot of the plants, berries, and then some of our landscape, so that you can get an idea of maybe utilizing and using some of these words. And then we'll give a brief, maybe some information of what we've learned about each of these items of plants and berries and items of the land. Tabeli, we're going to start with, this is our general term for any kind of tree, and it's our spruce tree. Spruce trees are said to be, if you see them in an area and they're straight, that usually means it's straight people there. That's a belief. It's an important tree. We utilize it for many things. It's medicinal, and it's also for work. And it provides a lot for us. There are many stories, Yanida'a stories, and also stories about Tabeli and how it helps us as a people.
Yeah, can I add something, Sondra?
Yeah.
So, you know, Sondra's very right in saying that this is a very important tree to us, and that having straight trees is so important in terms of having a fish wheel. The fish wheel is made predominantly from spruce trees. The axle has to be harvested from a straight tree. You have to harvest a certain type of spruce tree for the axle, and that's the piece that's the log that goes across so that the fish wheel can rotate in the water. And then they use smaller, longer pieces of spruce to create the basket. So it has to be bendable. So like Sondra said, this is a very important tree to us. This tree provides medicine. This tree keeps us warm. It makes smoke for our moose hides, for when we're tanning moose hides, and we create and build fish wheels using spruce trees. And my favorite part of the Tabeli is the pitch. I compare spruce pitch to today's Neosporin. When you use spruce pitch on a cut or a sore, or like an injury on your foot, whether you scraped yourself or anything, if you use spruce pitch on those injuries, those small little scrapes, cuts, you won't have a scar. it heals quickly, and it's natural, and it sticks. So you just put it on and you put a Band-Aid over it and you don't have to worry about it. It's very efficient. And I just, like I said, I just compare it to today's Neosporin. It's very powerful. Hannah.
Kai, it's the birch tree, and birch tree, we use some of the species for galsachi, which is the birch bark baskets. Kalsachi, it's also called. It's we also use the birch water from them, kich or kichtu, and also the birch punk is utilized. And a lot of the birch trees, the way to find the tree that is the correct tree is using the younger trees, and they call them the eyes on them. And that's where you look to see if the eyes are correct, if they're far enough away. If they're too close together, then it's an older tree and it's not useful for what you're needing for birch bark basket. And a lot of the baskets too, you have to get them at a certain time of the year so you don't damage the tree, and not to over harvest when you do something like this. It takes a lot reciprocity to take for doing a basket. And I know many people would like to, and we'd like to do classes on them, but this is a resource that was used from our people, that they didn't take more than they needed, and they also utilized what was there and also put back in the ground so that it can be used back in and resourced again back into the earth.
Yeah, and the birch tree is a very strong tree. The wood is a lot harder, and so we would use this to build dog sleds. We'd also use this to bend and form the ring for drums and for the drumstick. And then we'd also use birch to create snowshoes. So this type of wood is very valuable for us in terms of transportation and ceremony, because we use drums when we do potlatches and when we sing songs and when we celebrate. And also, as like Sondra said, like you have to be very respectful and have a sense of knowing and understanding when you go to harvest birch, because if it's not done properly and not done in a good way, you can completely harm the tree where it cannot heal itself. Hannah.
We also, many of you heard of chaga, and this is the resource of birch punk is used, and a lot of that is been over harvested also, and it's really important not to with our birch trees, to make sure that things are taken care of very carefully. And yeah, it's one of those resources that are out there that got kind of commercialized, I feel. And
that's so true, Sondra. Like with the chaga, we practice where Sondra and her family practices this too. Like you only take what you need. You only take enough of what you need. And part of that is just respecting our resources. But the other part is like, when you harvest it, that's when it's most powerful. Then when it's like 6 months later and you're using it. So, if you really practice in taking what you need at that time, you'll always have strong resource of that item. So like chaga that's harvested from a tree that's a week old is a lot more powerful than chaga that was harvested last year.
Talres, it's our cottonwood tree. And this one is used for preserving for food, our salmon strips, moose meat. Also, the cottonwood buds are used, Talres latigi, and it is really important to utilize this in early spring. Also, they also use the sap, the cottonwood sap, and it keeps.
And so I was sharing with Sondra a story that I read in one of Jim Carrey's books. He has a book that was published, and it has stories from the Ahtna elders sharing information about who they or where they lived and where they traveled. And in that, Katie John has a story about roasting salmon and harvesting and utilizing salmon in the Bentonese area. And she talks about how a long time ago, they would dip cottonwood buds into salmon grease and eat them as a form of nutrients and resource rich food for vitamins and minerals. And also cottonwood bark is used for carving. And when I was growing up, the kids were taught how to whittle wood and carve and use a knife by carving on pieces of cottonwood bark. It's a softer wood and it's easier to carve, and it teaches you how to handle a knife safely. And then our elders would also carve spoons from the cottonwood too. So I grew up seeing that. I don't see that so much with our elders today, but when I was, this is maybe 20 years ago, we had a lot more elders around, and we would see older men, elder men carving spoons and such.
Another important tree is the kite, and this is the willow tree. And of course, there's many species of willow, but the red willow is the one that you would use for around the rim of kalsaki, or the baskets, because it's bendable, and it would help resource that bend of the rim. And it's really important to try it out, bend it, and see if it's a good bendable tree. If it breaks quickly, it's probably not the kite that you would use. Then there's of course the useful aspect of aspirin that it has in it, natural aspirin. And the word also for the pussy willows that come out of it, there's a word that's called Ahtna, and it means the puppies among the branches. So if you think about, there's the little puff balls that come out, it looks like, some soft little puppies, and that's what our elders used to think of, that is the puppies among the branches. Ahtna, which is really cute. And Jessica can talk more about the other things that it can be used for.
That's such a cute name for that, though. Yeah. So also, willow was used to treat bee stings and scrapes, and in particular, they would use the green willow, not the red willow, and you would chew the leaves up, and it does have a strong bitter taste to it, but you don't have to swallow it or anything. You just have to chew it up, and then you place that on a bee sting or scrape, and it'll take the inflammation and the sting away, and it also helps heal that little sting. So that's a really good thing to know when you're out in the woods and you're hiking or walking somewhere and you don't have access to like a first aid kit right with you, and you get stung by a bee. You can utilize the willow leaves to reduce the inflammation of that sting until you get back to your car or home. Also, willows were used to create frames for steam baths and for high tanning. And these frames are built the same. They're just used differently. The frame for steam bath is covered with tarps or blankets and used to make a steam like a sauna. And then the other mode is just a frame with a fire pit in the center. And then you place over the top, on top of the frame, your moose hide to have it smoked or tanned. And then lastly, so willows were also used to create snares. They're used for rabbit snaring, and they're used for creating and building fish traps. And not just the willow itself, but also the willow bark was used to as a lashing to tie the pieces together on fish traps. And they also used it to not just create fish traps, but to create not a weir, but lashings, like a fence to funnel the fish towards the fish trap. And so this is another, this is a very common resource in the Ahtna region, but it's also super resourceful. It's used for medicine. It's used for technology. It's used for, you can even eat willow leaves, like certain types of willow leaves at the certain time of year. So it's like spruce. It's used for multiple things. It's very valuable. It has to be respected. And like many things, you know, how you treat things is how you treat yourself. So you need to move into these spaces respectfully.
Now moving into more of our plants. Ketan is the word for the leaf, and this is a general term also for all plants. Ketan. Tlakuska is the fireweed, and when it first comes up in the springtime is where you can use it for greens, and it's really sweet and easy to pick, and it's also, you can make jelly out of it, out of the fireweed blossoms. It's really yummy, and a lot of times the fireweed is also that symbol of rebirth after a fire. You see tlakuska all over the country after a fire, after devastating fires. It kind of restarts and reboots again.
And Sondra, you can also dry the flowers on fireweed for teas. Like if you wanted to harvest the flowers for yourself to add to your home tea mix or even black tea mix. My mom does that. She harvests this, and then she also harvests dandelion root.
Hostan is the Alaskan rose, and of course they make it into the rose hips, and you can use those hips, the rose hips, for the medicine for tea, also the petals for tea. This is really also another sweet, yummy, fragrant tea that a lot of my family has used. Hostan, and the hos is the thorn, so the thorny leaf is what it says. Hostan.
And then and then if you can go back really quick, Sondra.
Yes.
For the rose hip, we would say nkus, right?
Inkus.
Nkus. And then in like for my family, we love to make rose hip jelly. It's so good. Just really good jelly.
Is the fiddlehead fern, and many of you can see that when it comes up in the springtime also. It's a spring green, and when they curl over is where you just take off that little curl, take it, and you would blanch it and cook it up with butter. It's really yummy. It's like a broccoli, and once you cut them off or take them off, they'll recurl again and start over. So you can utilize a single bush for quite a few cuttings. Klotsen is wormwood, and this is also stinkwood, is what it's also known as. This is a medicine, and it's utilized as a steam. So you can seep it on the pot, on a pot on the stove, and take in the steam, put a towel over your head and let the steam come into your lungs. If you have congestion, it's really good for that. It's also used as a compress. Take the leaves out and you could put it right onto your chest. It's also used in steam baths. I've seen that, and I think Jessica reminded me of that. Whereas you can put it and let it steam as you're throwing in the water on the rocks. So, and it means grass that's kind of smelly. So smelly grass is what it means.
And
literally.
but it smells so good. It has a really good smell. It doesn't stink. It has a good smell.
That's right. I don't know why it has that word, but it has a really medicine-y kind of smell. It's really fragrant.
And then we also use it for like inflammation for, arthritis, or if you have achy muscles from working out too much or doing too much. So we'll use it in that capacity as a salve, or as like Sondra said, we use it in a steam bath. Like we use this all the time in the summertime for a steam bath, because it's not only good for our muscles and our skin, but it's also good for your respiratory. So every time we're going in steam bath, we will harvest Kudats'hwdełdiix and kind of use it as like a paddle. We'll kind of like make sure to use it on our chest and back. And that's because it has such a strong medicine for your respiratory. It keeps you healthy and strong.
That's right. So you can use it as a switch, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bennett is larkspur, and this is a medicine used for when you happen to get lice. You would go ahead and boil it up and be able to wash with it, and it should take out all that little yap in your head. So this is the most important plant for us also. Chas is our Indian potato, and this is found around a lot of sandy banks, and you'll see the purple colored looking plant, but you have to make sure that it's not the poisonous one. So you have to really know your plants. There's another one that looks similar to this. This one grows along the sandy banks, and you would dig up the roots, and the roots are what you would use to eat. And those roots you would clean and cut them up and fry them up. And it's like a carrot.
Or like a parsnip.
Parsnip, thank you.
Yeah. And then like me and Sondra are talking about, like the best time to harvest this is in the springtime. And you can harvest it in the spring and late fall, but it's much better to harvest it in the springtime. And then if you see this by riverbanks, you can see this by riverbanks or like sandy places or places of water. Just make sure you go far enough off the trail or off the road system to harvest this, because this is something that you'll be consuming.
Goose is the wild celery, or we call it Indian celery too. You can eat it when it's young, and it's just like celery. You can pick it, and but it also can burn your skin if you're not used to it. You have to pick it early enough to where it doesn't get really hot. It'll turn woody. So in this fall time, it will look like just sticks of wood that are sticking out. And I remember when we were kids, we used to play with swords with them, It looks like water hemlock, which is very poisonous. So you have to know what you're looking for also. This is an important plant for us. It's all over South Central Alaska, and also in our Ahtna territory of Chicxulub and Sutton area.
And so this plant isn't really in our area. It's not even in our area, in the upper Ahtna area. I think our environment the summer is too cold and too short, and then our winters are just too cold for this plant to exist and thrive in our area. So I'm so thankful for Sondra because she lives in a location where this plant is all over. I've seen it in Palmer and Wasilla and Chicloon area, and you can see it even when you're driving. It's a big plant. And so I'm so thankful to her to learn about this plant because I didn't grow up with this plant. I didn't hear stories of how to take care and harvest and utilize this plant, but I'm learning it from Sondra as an Ahtna person from the southern side of the Ahtna region.
It's really important to remember if the flowers are blooming, then it's way too late. You just let it, just enjoy watching it, bloom out, because then it's way too woody and it's too hot on your skin. So, and it's said in many different ways, all the way through Denene country too. They say a word similar to goose. Hosko is also devil's club, and hos is the thorn. Koh is big, so big thorn. This is also another powerful medicine that we see in South Central Alaska and in our country of Chicloon, Sutton area, all the way down to the Kenai, and all the way down to Southeastern. And Southeastern, they have the big hosko. I mean, they are the big hosko ke'e, but they're huge. They're like plant trees compared to ours. Yes, ours are little babies. But some of our hosko can get up to be as tall as, you're looking underneath them as you're walking. But they're powerful medicine. For a long time, we were told, even though we lived among them, we were told not to mess with them because we didn't know the songs. We didn't know how to walk up to them because they are powerful. They can heal, but they also can hurt if you harvest them and think not in a good way for what you want, over harvesting or taking it for something else, because it's such a precious plant to us. And maybe that's why it has all the hos around it, the thorns, to protect it. I know when I go berry picking in my area, it's like the hosko protects the blueberries. So if you can get past the hos, you'll see a whole bunch of berries underneath them. And it's like protecting them, standing guard. So we'll be able to share a little bit about how to harvest this one also. It's a woody plant, and once you take off the hos and you take the layers off, you can make beads out of them, and you can chop them up and make holes in them. And this is a really amazing plant. But when you see the berries on it, the gigi, then it's all the medicine is going out.
And so, Sondra, this is a plant too that's not in our region of Alaska, of the Ahtna country. But we're so thankful of our southern relatives that know how to harvest and treat this plant. And when they make salves and medicine for it, and then they gift them, we're so thankful and appreciative of that, because this plant is so special and powerful and healing. And I really believe that when you're using medicine from people that know how to harvest and utilize and do all the ceremony and protocol around treating medicinal plants and medicine plants, that when you create that medicine or that salve, it's even stronger. It's its true self still. And so we're so appreciative of you guys, like Sondra and her sister and niece and her family know how to traditionally harvest and utilize hosko. And sometimes they'll make salves and they'll share it with people and stuff. And we're so appreciative of that. Yeah, and so we don't have this up in Chisachina, Alaska. I think this is something that's more around Chicxulub area. I think even in Valdez, right, Sondra? Like, yeah, and so we're just really appreciative of this plant, and for the people that know how to respectfully treat it and take care of it. And oh, can I add one more thing too, Sondra? So I got to recent as an adult, I've got to experience this plant not just as a medicine, as something that you consume or use on your body, but also I received a necklace with a horoscope bead on there. And to me, that self too is another form of medicine, having that bead on that necklace. It's to me, it's like a form of protection, or it's a form of like safety or staying well and keeping good. And so I love that necklace, and I always have people ask about it. What is that bead, and what does it mean to have that on there, and what does that plant mean? And so I always have good conversations when I wear that necklace that has that Hosco bead on there.
Getting into our gigi or berries is gigi, and that's our high bush cranberry. And this one is also called our smelly berry. As you can, in our country, when it's time for when the say is ready, you can smell it as soon as you get out of your car, as soon as you get out of your house, it's there. And to me, I don't think it's smelly. I think it's the sign of our environment that it's blooming, and it's like it's time to go berry picking. And this one is also used in for what we call our Indian pudding, and that's where it's baked or boiled, and the little casings are squished, and the berries are boiled out, and then sugar is added, and a little bit of flour is added to thicken it, and it's made this beautiful pudding. And you have to make enough sugar with it to add with the sweet and the sour, and it makes a really wonderful puddings that we give at potlatches. And it's a very special plant for us, and we cherish this plant.
Right. I mean, even like when they would serve this at potlatches, this gets served to the elders first before anybody else. And it is a strong smelling plant. To me, it always reminds me of like, it's like right before the seasons are going to change. Like it's still summer, but it's like a reminder that you're going to be coming into fall pretty soon.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a great way to say it, because it is. It's like, oh, Natlu is coming, because it is like the turning. It's the transition. When you know that's here, sometimes it's like already, but
yeah,
just knowing that it's time to harvest.
And then also, Sondra, like we say this berry a little bit different. We call it taunt'tel.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, Gigi. Yeah. It's a very good berry though. It's a very strong smelling, strong tasting berry that's full of vitamins and minerals and really good for you.
Really. High Gigi is our low bush cranberry, and it's also it's literally called the winter berry, and it can be eaten after winter. It's there to harvest at all times once it starts blooming, after the flowers are done. And this is also a very important one, because we utilize this. Of course, people use cranberries for Thanksgiving, use it on with meat, but also we can use it with our moose meat. It makes a great jelly. It's just a good berry to have. And when to harvest, it's an easy one to harvest, as there's usually many berries in our area is mainly high gigi. It used to be a lot of blueberries, but we have lots of high gigi now.
We have a lot of hey gigi too. I love this berry when you cook it up and then you have it with bannock and like moose meat or duck soup. Like Sondra said, this is a really, really good food with meat. And this can be harvested in the springtime. A long time ago, like our elders and their elders would harvest this after the snow would melt because the berry would still be good and it would still be on the bush before the new berries came in. So it was a good food that would transition them from, muskrat hunting and spring trapping and stuff to fishing, to when the fish would come.
Gizne is our blackberry or crowberry, and it is a really good berry, and I'll have Jessica go ahead and talk more about that.
Yeah, so we use this berry. We'll use this berry. We'll eat it fresh, or we'll fry it with moose fat in a cast iron pan. I think that's part of it, is using a cast iron pan. It tastes so good. If you ever have a chance to try it up, fry it up with a little bit of moose fat, and it's not to cook the berries, but it's just a little bit, and where it still feels fresh to you, so it's not cooked down to a sauce. And then also my grandma would use this as a natural dye. She would use blackberries and blueberries together in a coffee can with water to dye spruce roots that were going to be used to create birch bark baskets. And it would create either like a bluish or purplish color on the spruce roots, and it was really pretty decorative use of this berry. And in our language, we call this Nohtazi in Upper Ahtna area. And this is all over. You can find this in the timber, and you can find this all over, like in Alpine, like up in the mountains, up high above tree line. It's a very good berry. Yeah, and
it is the filler berry. If you don't have enough of your gigigali or your blueberries, you put them in there with gizne, and the gizne to mix with it to fill it up.
So true. So true.
All right. Speaking of blueberries, our gigigali is our good berry, and this is our choice berry of a lot of the pick of all berries, because it stores well, it tastes good from right off the bush. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to add sugar. You don't have to do anything. You just eat it right there. And of course, you turn blue everywhere. It's a really, as Jessica has said, it's a natural dye. I remember making a dye with gigigali, not even knowing what I was doing. I was just thinking, it's everywhere on me. It's got to be good in connecting to something. So I was trying to find a binder with it. So it's really great to hear that, Jessica, that's a traditional usage for the baskets. I didn't know that. But
yeah, oh, go ahead. Sorry, Sondra.
Yeah. That's okay. The gigigali has just always been the berry. Even like what my Aunt Katie would say, don't use gigigali for ginkas, because you shouldn't have to put anything with it. You eat it just like it is. You preserve it as it comes off the bush.
Yes, same with our family. Like, this is our go-to berry. When we go berry picking season, I would say this is like our foundational berry. Like, we love blueberries, and we love everything made with blueberry. It's such a healthy berry. And my grandma, this is probably my grandma's favorite berry, because when we were growing up as kids, we would help her pick her berries. And it's so funny because, like, when we go berry picking with her, this was the only time we would get candy and gum, because she would make sure that we wouldn't be eating the berries, especially with blueberry picking and stuff. And so she'd hand out candy to all of us and give us our little buckets, and we'd go out and harvest blueberries. And she had 3 freezers. She had her fish freezer. She had her meat freezer. So her fish freezer was like different types of fish. It could be grayling, it could be salmon, it could be burbot, any type of fish in our area. And then the meat freezer was like sheep meat, moose meat, caribou meat. And then she had the berry freezer. And so our job was to help her fill up her berry freezer every year, hence the candy.
Wow.
So,
What a way, what an incentive.
right?
So there's also another berry that we don't eat, Dengue, and this one is called the silverberry, and we talked a little bit in our face-to-face class. It has a seed in the middle of it, and it was used for clothing. And once you take off that top layer, you can put a needle right through it, and you'll have your hole. But you have to do it as soon as you take off that coating, otherwise it'll get hard as a rock, and it'll just be a little seed. And it's got little stripes on it. It's really beautiful. And if you see it alongside the sandy shores of the water, it'll be just bushes of, it looks like somebody spray painted. It's silver spray paint on the bushes. It's really very beautiful, and we call it Dengue.
And when we call it demba. And so in our area, we don't have this plant. We don't have this plant in probably the central and northern part of Ahtna country. But the fact that we have a name for it, demba, is just a testament of like how important this berry was in terms of beads before we had people coming into our country. These were the beads of our area. And the fact that, and up for silverberries just attests to that we also utilize this for beading and for clothing too.
And this is also the there's also the name for the pussy willow catkin that is around the pussy willow when it comes through, is also called Dedkiga. I thought that was interesting. Kudats'hwdełdiix is our raspberry, and of course we've used it for jams and jellies and natural dyes. And Jessica has other ways to say Kudats'hwdełdiix in her area.
Yeah, so we have 2 different types of raspberry plants in our region. We have a taller plant, the regular raspberry bush, that's like, I would say 3 feet tall, maybe a little taller. And then also we have a really short raspberry plant that's the size of a cloudberry plant. The tall raspberry bush is called Denkoket. Denkoket. And then the little petite tiny plant that's like 6 inches off the ground, we call that Dingoket. Dingoket. And so I don't know if you have those 2 different types of raspberry plants in your region, but I know like in Chistochina area and Mentasta area, in Salina area, like the northern part of Ahtna region, we have those 2 different types of raspberry plants.
We have Dingoget, the little ones,
Mm-hmm.
but only for like maybe a week, and that's it. And then they're gone. And so it's not very, I guess, fruitful, but in our area, but we do have them. You have to really hunt for them.
It's like something that you probably wouldn't make jam with. It's like something you'd probably put on top of ice cream or something, or there, yeah. Like, there might be 5 plants.
Yes. But it's like a little treasure.
Yeah, it's a treat. Definitely a treat. It's so sweet.
Mm-hmm. So we also can't talk about our land, our Nene, without our na, our rivers and our water and our streams. So this word na is added to many of the ends of place names. So if you see place names, place names of all over, Ahtna country, you'll see na at the end, and that apostrophe at the end stops that sound. Not, it's not just na, it's na. And this is very important because the water is the main source of our directions. So you have to know where the water is, if it's upstream, downstream, across the stream, on this side of the stream or the river. That was the directional skill of knowing from north, south, east, and west. It was also knowing how your river flowed, where it was, and how far you were from it. So that was your directions. It wasn't the road or, this, the road or north, south, east, and west. It was manned or determined where the river was.
Yeah, it's definitely a different way of navigating than using like cardinal directions and stuff. And
Mhm.
it really attests to like our relationship and understanding to our environment and our relationship to our environment, because we had to be aware of those water sources and what direction they're flowing, and aware of where we are in relation to those water sources to give directions or navigate this whatever terrain you're in.
Then, of course, we have our mountain ranges of Kenaege, Kenaege, and these are also connected to many of the place names of Ahtna. All of these words right here are the central, lower, and western dialects, Kenaege, Kenaege, and Kenaege. And the mountains are also the place of where we look to see where our living room is, as we can see where the mountain range is. We also know that that's, that part of our environment. And it's a lot of mountains are, our boundaries. And I know my grandpa, who used to do a lot of trapping, walking, exploring, hunting, and he did a lot in the Dalai. He knew a lot about the mountain ranges, and there's even a trail that walks over these mountains that would seem unbelievable to us now, as many of us are not as, we have the road system where we travel on the road. We couldn't even imagine there's a trail that's so deep and wide. It was, it's unfathomable how big these trails were, walking trails for our native people through the mountains, the Dalai.
That's amazing, Sondra. Here too on the north side, we had trails that navigated through mountain systems. And part of traveling through mountain systems is learning how to travel through and around glaciers.
Mhm.
Yeah, and those trails did go through and across glaciers and stuff. I've grown up with stories of, like, one example is you have to be very quiet around glaciers because there is traditional knowledge of understanding that sound can impact the ice, and so you have to take careful for things like that. But yeah, I mean, I think that's why I love mountains so much, because our people, they spent time up there and they traveled through those spaces and stuff.
Really. So our last slide, second to slide, is a little video that we want to share with you. And it's a video that my niece, Melissa Shaginoff, did with a filmmaker friend of hers. Maybe it's Emma Schaefer. They'll have her name at the end. And she helped film, and it was with my sister, Carrie Shaginoff, who shares about Hosko, the Devil's Club, and how to harvest it. we wanted to give you a glimpse of how we would go into the land and think about how when we harvest things, and a little bit of insight into what we were told to do and respect our plants.
So today we are harvesting, and I'm teaching about hosko, which is the devil's cup, and how to harvest it, and the different things that I use it for, and the medicinal properties we're going to talk about. Also, the spiritual part of why we do this and why I've been interested in learning about hosko. And hosko in Ahtna means the hos is the thorny part. It's a very powerful plant. It has a lot of good properties to it. It's very strong. I was really grateful to have learned from Vivian Monk from Southeast Alaska. She taught me how to harvest it in a traditional way. And usually what I'll do before I go out, make sure that I'm in a good mind frame, I'm good state of mind, that I feel good about harvesting. I really try to think about the plants and what I want it for. Before I go out, I like to what we usually do is we'll sing a song for the group with whoever I'm with, just identifying that the plant, let the plant nation know that we're coming and that we're doing this in a good way. We're not doing it for gain, for personal gain or whatever. We have to, we're really trying to use it in a good way, and that we want it for healing. So I usually say a little prayer. You could say it to yourself. You could say it as a group. You could do a song in your mind. You could, just really kind of, and take the time to just sit with it for a minute. Like right now we're doing. We're kind of just being here. We looked on this trail for devil's bug, and this one just feels like the right one to come talk to. We also try to keep in mind that we're not here to, we don't take anything. With most plant gathering and stuff, we don't take everything out of it. Like, we're not going to wipe out this whole area. We're going to leave some. Even though there's tons here, we just don't do that. We always leave a little bit for the next person or for the plant itself to keep growing. Another thing that's important is that you give something to yourself. So, like Katie had told us was it's important to use the medicine, pick the berries, dig up roots, pick your medicine plants so they come back every year. Because once we stop doing it, they'll stop growing around you. And that was the belief that our people had. So I really try to do this every year. I try to keep it going. And I want to teach other Alaska Native people to keep that going. As you can see, they have big leaves. You can smell it. I don't know if you guys can smell the smell. They all have thorny leaves. Like we were talking about the eating celery, kind of looking the same, but to know that they only has the sporty stuff, the whole part of it. So you can't, if you run into it, you're gonna know. Make a little spot right here. I put willow and tobacco in the little hole to give thanks. Always wear leather gloves. Go. Just go that way. Have your handle. So there's really 3 layers to this. There's this outside brown, there's the green, and then there's the white part. Actually, there's probably 4 because there's even a little white part that's inside the stuff. That's softer than until it dries. It dries really hard. The stick part of it dries really hard. And that would be the bead that we're going to use. I see what you mean about the little world. I'm in Plant Nation right now.
I want to say Chinan for that little film. It was a really great demonstration of how to take care of yourself as you go out to harvest, and whatever you feel you're putting into this medicine, or whatever you feel or whatever your intentions are goes into whatever you harvest. That the plants are not just something that are out there, they really are alive, and that they bring a property of healing and also life that you ingest or put on your body or wear. They're real and live things. I think that's a great demonstration of that.
And I would just like to say to Nan, I am so thankful and glad that me and Sondra have this opportunity to share with you not only about the Ahtna language, but also how to understand our culture and who we are as a people, and how to honor natural spaces in the spaces that you're going to be working in this summer through the National Park Service. That area that you're working in is Ahtna country. Our people, our ancestors have lived and existed in the spaces that you're going to be working in. And it's so important and an honor to share with you not only the names of the plants and animals and place names of the area, but also to share with you how to honor yourself and honor the space that you're working through respectful management and respectful relationship to your environment. Hona.
Shanann. Siitstead not snell yeeth. We say, Lord willing, Creator willing, we will see you all again. Shanann Tigil.